Lurch strafing in Apex is a quirk of the modified source engine that is used for Titanfall and Apex Legends. Its main purpose in Titanfall was allowing controller players to have more movement and control while in the air. This is due to joystick being an analog input, which is different from mouse and keyboard, where the input is binary or digital, where it's either on or off, whereas with the joystick, you can have it move in any direction and also has an amplitude. This means that control players aren't as able to air strafe like in CSGO. A lurch is a small amount of velocity you gain in an input direction while you are moving upwards vertically. In Titanfall 2, you would get 3 distinct lurchers, meaning you could redirect your movement, but not to any obscene degree like you see in Apex. In Apex, there are no limits on how many lurchers you can quote-unquote stack, which is how many individual inputs you have, meaning you can completely change your momentum's direction. In this tutorial, I'm going to explain how lurching works, how to use it to redirect your movement, and how to use it in a fight. And I'm not simply just going to tell you how to do it. It's not just a tutorial on replicating it in game. I'm going to tell you how to understand what you are doing instead of replicating what I do. It's not a simple input loop, it's intuitive and can be applied to any terrain, and I feel that if you have a deeper understanding of what you're doing, you'll be better off using it in a fight. In Apex, there are 8 directions you can move. Left, left forward, forward, right, down, left, down. Essentially, the fundamentals of lurching is that you want to gradually shift from one to another. Like if I try to lurch backwards like this, all of my momentum is gone. If I go from forward to backwards, what you want to do is you want to gradually move your hand across the keyboard. So one thing I would say to people trying to learn it is like move in a circle like this. That's what you want to kind of get down if you're going to lurch well, because you need to kind of have the understanding of rolling over, right? Because like, yes, I can go from a forward lurch to a right lurch like this, but it's not as effective as just holding like this. See how far right I go? But if I go like this with the roll, I go even further right. The roll is one of the most important mechanics to understand when lurching. So essentially, what you want to practice is not crossing inputs. That is probably the biggest thing that's going to make your lurch horrible, because like if I try and do like a figure 8 here and then I just press D a bit too early like that, you can see I lose a lot of momentum. So that's what you're doing with your left hand when you're using WASD. And you don't even have to have scroll wheel down to forward. You can still use this lurch or your WASD to lurch well. It's just that by scrolling, you can essentially lurch backwards. So I have my scroll bound to forwards, and you can essentially lurch backwards. If I hold S and then press W, you see I'm stood still. So the theory is, or well, not the theory, in practice, what happens is if I hold S and scroll forward, I'm lurching backwards, or I'm inputting I'm essentially like I would this direction, but backwards. And you can use that to lurch backwards, which is why you can scroll up, which should be forward, and lurch in any direction. In theory, the only inputs you can't spam are left and right, respectively. You can spam down right, forward left, you know. So now you understand the basics of lurching. That is how you lurch, that is how you redirect your momentum, it's how you can win gunfights. So, speaking of gunfights, how do you put it into practice? You want to take the idea of strafing as a whole, in that you want to mirror anti-mirror. But now, what you can do is you have the ability to redirect your movement more fluidly. One thing I would say is, it's not always viable to just lurch whenever you feel like it. I feel like over-lurching is a thing, and I'm guilty of it myself, but sometimes you just want to strafe normally. Like, you don't always need to be in the air, because one thing you have to remember is, if you mess up your lurch, you are going to be sat there, kind of, like a toadstool. And you aren't going to be able to pick up momentum again, unless you just stand up and start walking normally. You can start a lurch or a b-hop without even super glide or a slide or anything like that. If you're ADSing like this, you can jump, hold left, and then straight to the right. And this applies to the other way as well. This will give you just enough momentum to be able to slide. And therefore, because you can slide, start hopping around. This obviously works without ADSing. I would recommend not ADSing while lurching, simply because the reduction in speed you get from ADSing just makes lurching a lot harder, and it is doable, but you have to be way more precise, because any imperfections will slow you down even more if you're ADS than if you're hip firing. Another thing to mention is that you can wall bounce, or you can lurch out off a wall bounce. This is probably the one that you're going to be using the most, because it's probably the most useful. And if you want to, you can actually just tap strafe wall bounce on top of the wall and fall back. Another thing to note is that if you have high ground on someone, so say for example I'm on like this, someone down here, and I'm stood up here, you can obviously kind of peek like that, hold the high ground. Holding high ground while lurching is very good. Yes. But the thing you're probably going to be using lurches the most for is out of a wall bounce, slide in, slide out like that. The wall bounce is way more accessible than a super glide to do, because you can wall bounce off any wall, but obviously you can super glide off any ledge. But if you fuck up the wall bounce, you know, so what? So what, right? You go like that, you just slide back. But if you fuck up the super glide, you're gonna go in a really predictable arc. Not that the super glide isn't predictable anyway, you know? Most players can track a super glide, and they probably will. So essentially, in conclusion, during a fight, you want to be strafing like usual, but you have the added bonus of being able to have more momentum, essentially. That's what it boils down to. You can change direction, close the gap. All of that is way more fluid while lurch strafing than walking by itself. However, this does not mean you should be lurching at every opportunity you get. Because sometimes you run out of steam, and it's better to just strafe normally.